Pokémon Legends Z through A has gotta be one of the most underwhelming games ever. I thought the trailers looked uninteresting and promised a mediocre experience, and it seems that my assumptions were correct. In fact, it was probably one of the lamest trailers I've ever seen for a game, especially one for a series that I enjoy. I couldn't even pretend to be excited about it.
I'm so excited! I'm scared!
I was more excited to see how bad the game would be than I was about its existence, a practice all too common with mainstream entertainment now. Now that the game has been out for a while, it has received mixed reception. A lot are calling it out for its flaws, while others are praising it, even going so far as to say that it's peak and one of the best of the series. In fact, seeing posts like these praising the game and ranking it as one of the best of the entire series is probably one of the biggest reasons I wanted to make this video. I even saw someone name it as one of the greatest games of the decade. To those people and the critics that gave this game high scores, I just want to ask one question.
Are you really retarded?
No, I'm not.
Cool. Great job, man. I mean, I thought you were really retarded.
I know game critics are basically a joke now, but it still perplexes me that they'll give this an 8 when they've given better Pokemon games, like Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire, lower scores. It confuses me even more that people who aren't content creators are praising the game as well. I guess it's not really surprising that people like it. I knew the game would do well regardless of how good it was. The game could force you to cut off one of your fingers in front of your Switch 2 camera like in Heavy Rain in order to play it, and it would still sell well. The game could take place on a single untextured plane with random Pokemon appearing, and as long as the player could catch shiny Pokemon, they'd still love it somehow. Just because something is popular certainly doesn't mean it is good. There's tons of mediocre music, movies, and games that perform well. There's a lot of mindless normies in the world who just consume slop. And make no mistake, this game is slop. As long as it's connected to a big name, there will still be people who will watch or play it. It's pretty wild that one of the biggest game franchises ever, as part of one of the largest media franchises ever, would put out slop for their newest game, the first one to be out for the Switch 2 as well. The game feels like an experiment to see how little effort they can put into a game while still selling tons of copies. Their goal was to produce the perfect minimum viable product and for people to buy it. Now, to be clear, it's okay if you like this game and enjoyed it. I like Pokemon and I can see reasons why people would like this game, but I also see way too many flaws that I think disqualify this game from being great in any capacity. So if you enjoyed this game, you don't need to get mad at me, just hear me out. The whole reason I'm criticizing it is because I want us all to have great Pokemon games, and you should too. I have a lot to say about this game, but I need to be transparent about a few things first. I haven't played the game, and I probably won't. I don't own a Switch 1 or 2, and even if I did, I wouldn't buy this game. I don't have a ton of money, so I usually wait for even good games to go down in price before buying. So buying a bad game for $70 would be like betraying myself. But the thing is, I can still critique the game, and I'll be fair about it. I won't talk about things like how it controls or any personal experiences, since I don't have any, but I will critique everything else. Even though I haven't played the game, I've made sure to do my research. I've watched hours of gameplay and reviews about the game, and I have a pretty good understanding of its flaws. I know a lot of you will probably comment that you can't talk about a game you haven't played, which is fair, but at the same time, others will say that we need to stop giving these companies money if we want things to be better. Honestly, I'd rather go with the latter option. It saves me money and saves my sanity from playing this game. Before I get into the issues, be sure to subscribe and like the video. I'm trying to get to 500 subscribers, so I appreciate every new sub. With that being said, let's get into the problems with this game. People have said that this game had a lot of potential, and I have to disagree with them. Now, if you're saying that the premise of setting the next Legends game in Kalos, bringing back Mega Evolutions, and upgrading the old battle system into a real-time system had potential, then I would agree with that. However, that wasn't the plan. As soon as you read the fine print of the premise that states the game will be set entirely in Lumiose City, and that Pokemon will only be encountered in wild zones, the premise falls apart. Most rational people's reaction to this was,
I don't like your plan. It sucks.
I think if this game was a lot more polished and was a budget title named Pokémon Z-A Battle Tournament, it would be more acceptable, but taking place entirely in one city for a Pokémon Legends game was a dumb idea. Pokémon games were always about going to cool places and catching Pokémon there and meeting new trainers. A big part of RPG games in general is exploration and going on a big adventure. A game like Fallout 76 has many flaws, but one thing it does do well is that it has a huge and diverse map that's fun to explore. Even games like GTA that take place mostly in a city are fine because the city is huge, it feels alive, and there's a lot that you can do in it. Lumio City is boring and lifeless. Most NPCs just stand around staring at nothing. Most of the buildings are all copy and pasted JPEGs that you can't go inside of. I know you're saying, but wait, you can also go on rooftops, in the sewers, inside a few select buildings, and also in the alternate dimension city in the DLC. Okay, am I supposed to be impressed by that? Silent Hill 1, a game that came out in 1999, had all those levels and more, and it even included the alternate world for free, no $30 DLC needed. Going back to what I said about the city feeling lifeless, I've heard some people say that Lumios feels alive and is great. Liar! I have to strongly disagree with that. Maybe I need to play the game to get it, but from the few hours of gameplay I've seen, most of it looks the same and is incredibly dull to look at. The city is also supposed to be based on Paris, so there should be large crowds of people to give you the feeling of it being a big city. I played the demo for the newest Digimon game, and it had no problem with having lots of people all around the city. Sleeping Dogs, a game from 2012, was able to have a city that felt like it was lived in. That game has tons of people populating the city, all doing stuff, and they feel alive. They react to you if you bump into them, and they interact with other NPCs. Not having all these things makes the game feel so dull, especially when the game only takes place in the city. I think the defenders of this game need to play any other game. In a game like Hogwarts Legacy, the school is full of life and people are always doing things in it. Also, you can leave Hogwarts and visit other locations in the game. Unless the point of the game is to replicate the feeling of Paris syndrome, either make the city great or let us leave. Or you can do something crazy and do both of those things. But that must be only reserved for good games, not for a game from one of the largest gaming franchises ever. I wanted to compare this game to others I've played, and specifically to games that take place in a post-apocalyptic setting, to see if post-apocalyptic cities are more alive than a city that is based on one of the most famous cities in the world. A city that's supposed to be a huge and bustling city. In Metro Last Light, you visit a city that feels way more alive than Lumios. There's people eating, talking, juggling in front of kids, and people selling stuff. It feels real and lived in, especially for its apocalyptic setting. Even a game like Dying Light, where the city is overrun by zombies, feels more alive than Lumios City. That's right, the undead are more alive than the characters in this game. Also, that game can render more than 3 characters moving at once in a non-cutscene. If someone at Game Freak pulled that off, they'd immediately be promoted to the president of the company and awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. Now, I already mentioned that the city is lifeless, but the game just looks terrible. I hear a lot of people cope about the graphics in the game. People say no one cares about the graphics in a Pokemon game, or they don't really matter, but they do. Good graphics help with immersion and enjoyment. This doesn't mean the graphics need to be absolutely stunning and set a bar that remains unmatched for a decade, but they should be pretty solid for a game series of this caliber. I consider myself a fair judge of things like graphics, and I don't mind games with older graphics. I've played a ton of PS1 and PS2 era games recently. When critiquing a game, I take things into consideration, like when the game came out and limitations of graphics for that time. So I don't expect PS1 games to look hyper-realistic, but I do expect games to look good with context. By context, I mean considering things like the size of the team, when it came out, what kind of art style it's trying to use, etc. So a game like Faith looks good, even though it's using a minimalist Atari style. The models and characters look fine. They're not terrible, but also not great. The city looks awful, and is just a couple steps above mobile slop games. Some of the buildings look okay, but most are terrible looking, and look like a PNG was slapped onto a rectangular prism. The windows and balconies are just a flat image. Sometimes you'll get lucky and have a flat image of a flower pot that an intern drew thrown on top of the window. This looks horrendous. It's common for buildings to look like this when they're far away so things run better, but they aren't supposed to look like this up close. There's also lots of graphical glitches where textures on buildings don't match up, or where the textures of two buildings merge together. While I continue talking about how the buildings look, I'm going to show a bunch of random screenshots of other games that show off how they look so we can compare this game to others. One important thing to note is that not only are these games older, but also they are all much smaller franchises than Pokémon. Pokémon is a much larger franchise. They have the money to make it not look like this. This is embarrassing and shows they just don't care. Other games have much more interesting cities that are either more detailed, more colorful, or more varied. Or at the very least, they don't have JPEG windows with flat flowers slapped on top like a sticker. This might be okay if this was an N64 or GameCube game, but it's not, so it's not okay. Another thing is that the pop-in is really bad. I wanted to see if other games also had pop-in that was this bad, so I ran through a bunch of games and they did have some. The difference is those games were much older and they have much more going on in the world, so it makes sense that there's pop-in, because it's rendering a bunch of trees, buildings, moving vehicles, and people. Meanwhile, this game has pop-in for characters that are 5 feet away from you, when there's like 4 static characters on the screen. I have a theory on why these things are the way that they are. Scarlet and Violet had bad frame rate issues. There were times where it would get really bad, and things as simple as jumping with your Pokemon would cause lag. So I think the reason the buildings look bad, the city is lifeless, the pop-in is so bad, and the NPCs barely move around is because they had to do everything to make sure the performance wasn't awful. It's apparent their engine sucks or they don't know what they're doing, or they just don't care. Probably some of all of those, to be honest. There's a lot of fans saying it doesn't look bad.
Huh? Are you blind or something?
To be fair, if you only look at the main character and the NPCs, then maybe you have a point. Just don't look at anything else. You might find things like building texture issues like I showed before, or literal seams in the water, like the YouTuber Imported Cheese found in his video. There's other videos about this game that go more into depth of why the graphics matter, and I agree that they do. A lot of people argue that graphics don't matter, it's all about the gameplay, the story, or other things. There's some truth to this. I feel gameplay and story outweigh graphics generally, but they are also an important factor. Again, that doesn't mean it needs to be absolutely incredible, but it should be good, and for a franchise this big, it should be very good. Also, if the graphics were great, fans would post 100 screenshots a day praising the graphics of this game. Speaking of gameplay, let's talk about it. To be fair, this is the point I can criticize the least, since I haven't played it. I can't tell you how the new controls are, or how the new battle system plays or feels. From what I've seen and heard, it looks like a mixed bag. For the positives, the game has the basics of Pokemon that fans love. You can catch Pokemon, build a team, fight trainers, and do extra things like side quests or shiny hunting. I think the problem is for a lot of fans, that's enough. When in reality, it's the bare minimum. I understand that the Pokemon formula is fun and addicting, but I want to see it in a good game. The new battle system seems like a mixed bag. Some people like it, others don't. The battle loop appears to be sneak up on a trainer, one-shot their first Pokemon, then spam moves after their respective cooldown disappears. I appreciate them trying something new, and I think it's a good idea to have a different battle system in the Legends games, but it needed some more polish. Some of the pathfinding is pretty bad from what I've seen. It doesn't look very intuitive to control your Pokemon, but again, I can't say for myself. Also, Pokemon will get stuck on objects, and your moves might get blocked by a random trash can or other worldly object. It just seems like it can get frustrating fast. This is probably why the game conveniently teleports you to a nice flat plane for the rogue mega fights, which is kind of lame, but it is probably for the best for gameplay's sake. It's just a shame that a game like Metal Gear Solid on the PlayStation 1 could have unique boss fights in completely different and interesting locations, but this game that came out 25 years later can't be bothered. Another complaint I've heard is that apparently you can't dodge while locked onto a target, which is annoying. One plus with the new battle system is that you don't have to wait 5 years to go through all the text if an enemy Pokemon uses a boosting move or a multi-hitting move like you had to in previous games. Instead, all of those things just get thrown to the side of the screen, which gets distracting. Especially if you use a multi-hitting attack, it has to tell you 5 times that it was super effective. This is another problem with the game. The screen gets really cluttered during the rogue mega fights. You have your friends giving you hints on one side of the screen, and on the other side of the screen, you have messages being spammed on how effective your moves were. But you need to be focusing on attacking and dodging, so it's just distracting. This is why it'd be nice if there was voice acting in the game, so they could just tell you the hints instead of you needing to read them while in battle. I'll go into the voice acting more, but first I wanted to talk about the game being too easy. This has been a problem for the Pokemon series for a while, but this game seems to be set on the Game Journalist difficulty setting. There may be some challenging moments or fights, but for the most part this game makes things nice and easy for you. You don't have to worry about knocking out Pokemon, you can still catch them after they are knocked out. So now you can just one-shot Pokemon, catch them, and you're done. If you've lost some balls while trying to catch a Pokemon, no problem. You can just talk to an NPC and they'll give them back to you. You can even run from normal trainer battles apparently. Also, you don't need to worry about going through the whole tournament going from rank Z to A. The game conveniently skips a good chunk of them. If this is your first time ever playing a game, there's good news. The game will hold your hand and give you a nice 3-hour tutorial. This is a problem that some games have, which is having long, boring tutorials and not letting you get into the game. I don't mind slow burn games. I just finished Persona 4 for the first time, and that game starts out slow. But that game has an interesting story, great characters, amazing music, and fun gameplay, and it's not giving you 70 tutorials. On a side note, Persona 4 is an amazing game that I got for $9 on sale, while this game is $70 plus another $30 for the DLC, and this game is trash. Let's go back to talking about voice acting. One of the biggest complaints for the series since it entered the Switch era is the lack of voice acting. After 5 main game titles and the release of the Switch 2, to the shock of no one, there is still no voice acting. There is no excuse for this. In fact, I will debunk all of them now. It's not because they don't have money. Voice acting isn't that expensive and they have tons of money. Also, much smaller games with much smaller budgets have voice acting, like The Cat Lady or Tormented Souls. It's not because of tradition, that's an equally dumb argument. Pokemon games have changed things constantly throughout the series, like how TMs and HMs work, the physical special split, and Sun and Moon not having any gyms. The movies and TV shows have voice acting. The Pokemon and Pokemon Trainer in Super Smash Bros. Have voice acting. Detective Pikachu, a spin-off game, had voice acting in it. Even The Town with No Name, a hilariously bad game that came out in 1992, had voice acting.
Give me a drink, bartender.
In fact, if I look up a list of terrible games on Google, only 2 of the first 9 games don't have voice acting in them, which makes sense. One came out in 1982 for the Atari 2600, and one is a really bad racing game, but all the others do at least have a little voice acting in them. Yes, even Action 52, an NES game, has a voice line before you start the game.
Make your selection now.
There were shovelware Wii games with voice acting, like Action Girls Racing. I've gotten computer games in my Chick-fil-A kids meal when I was a kid that had voice acting in it. I'm being dead serious. I have gotten games in a kids meal that cared enough to put voice acting in it more than the newest game in one of the top gaming franchises of all time. If at any point you're going to use the argument that it's a kids game as a cowardly way to deflect criticism for something that you didn't even make, that argument doesn't work here. Most kids games since the early 90s have had voice acting in them. The first Putt-Putt game that came out in 1992 had voice acting. Pretty much every Humongous Entertainment game and every Jumpstart game has voice acting. This game has some complicated words in it, and some words that are in French. It would help kids a lot to have it voice acted. Why would you make the game so easy for kids and then not even bother with adding voice acting? I know some might not think it is a big deal, but it matters. Voice acting makes a huge difference. Imagine games like Silent Hill 2, Metal Gear Solid, The Stanley Parable, Bioshock, Mass Effect, Skyrim, GTA, etc. without voice acting. Imagine GLaDOS, Cortana, or Shodan without voice acting. It especially matters when the game has tons of dialogue. It starts to get boring. Why even bother syncing the lips to the dialogue if you don't add voice acting? It feels uncanny. They don't even need to put full effort into it. A lot of RPGs don't voice act everything, like moments when you walk up and talk to characters, but it is needed for the cutscenes. It would make the game feel so much more alive and interesting. Imagine if they went all out and everyone had voice acting. If they had enemies talking in battles, giving commands to their Pokemon, and taunting you. It would make the game feel way more alive. There's no reason why these games don't have voice acting. They are lazy and don't want to spend time and money on it. Full stop. They don't care, so they don't do it. The end. End of discussion. No more cope. Let's get through some other random complaints. The day-to-night transitions are terrible. They're like Simon's Quest. You remember the famous AVGN review where that was one of the first complaints he had? This game's ones are just as bad. The gameplay gets interrupted by the transition, and if you were trying to battle or catch a Pokemon, oh well, you have to watch a small cutscene and wait for the game to load, because they need to change up the map and aren't good enough programmers to do it naturally, or they don't care enough. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure that this can mess up you catching a shiny or a special Pokemon, which is always great to hear. The cutscenes are pretty boring and lazy. You feel the lack of voice acting, but besides that, the cutscenes are so basic and bare bones. It feels like they were limited to how many objects and animations they could use, so you see characters give fist bumps or make shapes with their hands like 50 times. There's some times where the animations are good and it looks pretty good, and the characters themselves are unique and well animated for the most part, but there's so much corner cutting when you pay attention to it that it's embarrassing. The game cuts to black or pans the camera away so many times when it doesn't want to animate something. The cutscenes themselves just don't feel smooth at all. A character will give another one an object, but you don't see them hand it off and take it. It just pans away, or you just see them hold out an empty hand with no objects in it, and then the player reaches out their hand and then receives nothing. Another example of this is there's a part where a bunch of Pokemon are going to go on a boat, and the screen fades to black and then shows them on the boat instead of animating them getting onto the boat. I know a lot of RPGs have cutscenes like these, but they also usually have really good cinematic style cutscenes as well, and they also have voice acting. Most of the cutscenes in this game, from what I've seen, are the more basic ones where you press a button to go through dialogue. Another thing is that after most cutscenes, the game needs to fade to black or load, where a lot of modern games now will seamlessly transition from gameplay to a cutscene, then back to gameplay, which I think is great when a game does that. I'll have a few examples of modern cutscenes in the background to show what good cutscenes look like, but going back to the constant fades to black, it only really makes sense to have the fade to black transitions if time has passed or if you are cutting to a different location, not because the game needs to recover after going through the harsh struggles of rendering a cutscene of two people talking while sitting in chairs. This game is basically Sonic 06, a game which had a lot of these same issues. You guys just aren't ready to admit it yet. But to be fair to Sonic 06, that game had some actually good looking cutscenes, especially the intro, which pretty much looked like Final Fantasy, and that game also had voice acting, so Sonic 06 is probably better than this game. I don't know, I haven't played Sonic 06. You don't see many fluid cutscenes where characters are doing things and interacting with objects, other people, or the environment in really interesting ways. I've seen PS1 games with more impressive cutscenes. The models might not be as high quality, but they flow so much better. They're also just way more interesting. That's a big problem with this game. It's just a boring, lazy game. Also, the game is just kind of all over the place with the story. It lets you skip a bunch of ranks in the tournament, then proceeds to add a bunch of padding anyway. It's also lame that there's no real villain. Even though there's a loan shark that basically tricks your friend into getting a predatory loan and then threatens you and your friends, the game basically gaslights you into thinking he's a great guy. Like, sure, he made your friends go into debt and threatened you multiple times, but he makes his bed every morning, so he's a real stand-up guy. It even forces you to pretty much tell him he's a great guy. Must be an allegory for Nintendo or something. Another thing is the $30 DLC. Not a lot of people talk about this, but if from what I understand is true, this is pretty much pay-to-win DLC. You get access to a lot more megas and other Pokemon that you can probably use in the online mode, and you'd have an advantage over others. Even if that's not the case, it's still lame for there to even be DLC that was announced before the game came out. That's not really DLC, that's cut content. Nintendo also isn't the kind of company that creates a Game of the Year or Ultimate Edition of the game that you can buy for cheaper than the release price that includes all the DLC. Those bundles also go on sale for even less, so you can buy them for like $10 to $15 or even less than that. But nope, that's not possible with Nintendo. The Switch 2 version of Breath of the Wild doesn't even come with the DLC, which I think most other companies would put that in. This game is also lazy in many other ways and is missing features that it should have. One big thing is rideable Pokemon. Pokemon X and Y, which introduced the Kalos region, had multiple rideable Pokemon. The previous Legends game also had rideable Pokemon. This game doesn't have any rideable Pokemon. The worst part is that they tried to patent that gameplay mechanic, and they aren't even using it. In my opinion, patenting mechanics like this is peak scummy company behavior. This is as bad as when Naughty Dog gave strikes to YouTube channels who criticized The Last of Us Part 2. No one who actually loves games would patent a basic gameplay mechanic like that. Only a washed up has-been who has been outshone by a rival game and is incapable of making something as good as the rival game would do that. In addition to rideable Pokemon, you also can't ride a bike or use roller skates. Even though PS2 games like Jak 2 or Kingdom Hearts 2 had hoverboards or skateboards that you could ride around in the cities, and Pokemon X and Y had roller skates and bicycles that you could ride. You can catch a ride in a taxi, which as far as I've seen are just stationary. There doesn't appear to be moving vehicles around the city, a thing PS2 games could do. The best part is when you take the taxi, it just fades to a black screen and shows dialogue boxes where you get to talk to the driver while you go on your trip. There's no cutscene of you riding around, just a black screen with dialogue boxes. Parasite Eve, a PS1 game, showed the characters talking in the car during cutscenes, but this game that came out in 2025 can't do that. You can't even jump in the game. You can just fall in style like Buzz Lightyear and get a weird jump boost with your phone, or you can roll around off of ledges. You can't even climb onto a ledge, so there's times where an item's on a ledge just above you, and you have to find a building to go up to and fall off of it and hope you land where the item is, instead of just being able to walk up to the ledge and climb on top of it. You also can't swim. This has to be one of the first Pokemon games where you can't do that. You can't even fish in the water. It makes sense since they don't know how to do anything right, or anything at all for that matter. I'm surprised they even let you walk around in the game. You can do more things in prison. People in North Korea have more freedom to do things than you can in this game. I could go on about some of the other things you can't do, but instead I'm going to just compare this game to another open world game. I'll even be fair, I won't choose something like GTA or any other very polished and well-regarded game. Instead, I'll compare this to Goat Simulator 3. You've probably heard of the first one. It's a silly meme game. This is the sequel to that game that came out in 2022. I saw it was free to play on Amazon Luna, so I tried it out for fun and had a decent time with it. It has issues, but at the same time it does a lot of things that this Pokemon game doesn't do. Before I go into it, I'll note that this footage is from Amazon Luna, so the quality may be lesser than if I was not streaming it. Anyways, let's look at what Goat Simulator 3 does that this game doesn't. For starters, you get a good sized map to explore. You're not just limited to one city. There's suburbs, farms, zoos, beaches, forests, and a bunch of other areas to explore. This is what's so frustrating with Z to A. Kalos was such a cool place and had a lot of interesting areas, including beaches, mountains, ice areas, haunted houses, crystal caves, forests, and many others. So it's really lame that it just takes place in Lumiose. When I was playing X and Y, I looked up maps of Lumiose on Reddit and remember a lot of people hated Lumiose, or at least navigating it, since it's kind of confusing. It was just an awful idea to have the whole game take place in it. It'd be like if GTA 6 just took place in a cul-de-sac. The whole point of games like this is to go on adventures and explore new places. There's a lot of stuff that happens in Clocktown and Majora's Mask, but you get to leave it eventually. The whole plot of the very start of Kingdom Hearts is about leaving the island. Fallout 1 or 3 wouldn't have been very much fun if you just stayed in the vault the whole time. I feel like a hero's journey needs a journey. That's why literally every other Pokemon game lets you explore a whole world. But no, this game is peak, trust me. Somehow doing nothing right at all and doing pretty much everything worse than almost every other game in existence is worthy of being S tier and is definitely worth $70 plus the $30 DLC plus the amount you pay for Switch Online if you want all the content. Going back to Goat Simulator 3, the areas of that game feel so much more alive than Pokemon Z through A. Cars drive around, and people walk around and interact with you. They may come up to try and pet you or kick you around. You'll even see people interacting with the world, whether they're doing work or just walking around. In Legends Z through A, some people do walk around and do stuff, but most just stare off into space. Also, there's voice acting in Goat Simulator, so in general, everything just feels way more alive. You can also enter a lot of the buildings. Speaking of buildings, they have windows that actually look like windows and not just an embarrassing JPEG with a flower sticker. You can also ride a bike in this game. You can also jump and wear roller skates. To be fair, the skates are just cosmetic, but you can already do flips and grind on things, so it's basically like you already have skates. You can even drive cars around. You can also get lots of other things to travel around like a jetpack or a paraglider. You can also swim and fish in this game. The game also doesn't need to hold your hand or give you hour-long tutorials. It also has cool things like local co-op, which isn't very common now in games. Also, this game is only $30, with the lowest Steam sale price at $9. It may not have a long, gripping story, but it is fairly priced. Meanwhile, Pokemon is over twice the price at $70, and Nintendo would rather recarpet their offices with broken glass and screws and force everyone to be barefoot than discount the game to even a decent sale price. Like I said, it's not a perfect game at all, but the amount of basic things it does that Pokemon doesn't do is an absolute embarrassment, and everyone who defends this game should be embarrassed. The worst part about Pokemon Z through A is everything that it isn't. Pokemon should be a big adventure that lets you go to tons of places, not just be confined to a city with lame wild zones, which even the NPCs in the game don't like. Then pile on everything else wrong with the game, and it is apparent that this game is the laziest Pokemon game, if not one of the worst ones ever. There's no excuses for this. They had an extra year of development, so there's no reason it should be this unpolished and low effort. What was the game like before that? Did the character fall through the ground every 5 minutes? Did the game crash all the time? Did the skybox have visible lines in it? Seriously, what did they do with that extra year? They just don't care at all, which is why no one should defend this game. One of the biggest proofs they don't care is the supposed budget. Apparently, this game had a budget of only $13 million. That's embarrassingly low. I know a lot of companies spend way too much on things to the point where it's suspicious, but do you even realize how low this budget is? Did you remember the Disney Plus TV series Willow that was so poorly received that it was permanently removed from the service? The budget for that show was about $136 million according to Forbes, meaning they spent around $17 million an episode. That means that Pokemon put less money into this game than Disney did into one episode of Willow, a show that got removed from their service. The show Witcher Blood Origin was about $12.8 million an episode, so about the same as the budget for this game. Star Wars The Acolyte was about $28.75 million an episode. I could keep going, but the point is they do not care about you. Those shows that had extremely poor reception got more money put into them than this game, and this game comes from a much more profitable franchise than those shows do. Pokemon is not a damaged brand like Star Wars, yet they care less about their fans in the sense of spending money on them. Because they need the money to sue Palworld, because if you're not good enough to beat them, the only thing left to do is destroy them. I think one of the best ways to describe how I feel about this game is this clip from The Godfather.
What have I ever done to make you treat me so disrespectfully?
It just feels disrespectful that they put this little effort and money into the game and are still charging $70 and an additional $30 for DLC. That's unacceptable, and people need to stop defending this game. The whole point of this video is I want people to realize this game is not good. It should have been so much better. It should have been a huge game with tons of places to explore and things to do. Pokemon fans have to have some of the lowest standards ever. As long as they can shiny hunt for hours on end and post pictures of their shiny Pokemon online, it's great. Even if you love this game, you should still want a better game, and you should still admit it is a flawed game. This is just consumer slop entertainment for consumers. It's being praised for doing the bare minimum and being a popular and well-recognized brand that people like. This is for the people who have 30 Funko Pops, piles of plushies, and hundreds of dollars of Pokemon cards. The people who have the $450 life-size Gardevoir plushie that is suspiciously out of stock. For people who want something actually good that respects them, I suggest they keep looking. Play a different RPG series. I played the demo for the newest Digimon game, and it was pretty good. You could also check out games like the Tales of series, which I think is underrated, or play any Atlas RPG. Persona 4 Golden was probably one of my favorite games I played last year. It runs circles around Pokemon. You could probably play any other RPG, and at least you'd get the feeling the devs cared. Not to mention you could probably get them for much cheaper, especially if they're on sale. As of writing this, you can get a bundle of Metaphor ReFantazio and Persona 4 Royal on sale for $47. Which is about $22 less than the Switch 2 version of Legends Z through A, not including the DLC. You could also get Persona 4 Golden on sale, and it would still be less than Legends Z through A with those other two games. I haven't played Metaphor or Persona 5 yet, but they have fantastic reviews, and people love those games. Metaphor won a ton of awards, including Best RPG of 2024, and both games are probably 20 million times better than Legends Z through A. Be smarter with your time and your money, and don't waste your time on products that don't respect you or charge you full price while not even delivering on the bare minimum. Don't fall for the key jingling and the nostalgia bait. The Pokemon series won't get better until they actually put effort into it, and if they don't, you shouldn't give them your money. But sadly, it probably doesn't even matter at this point. It'll still do well because there's a lot of pop culture zombies with incredibly low standards who will eat it up, and as a result, it'll be a long time before they actually have to care. What disappointed you the most about this game, or the Pokemon series in general? Let me know in the comments. Also, let me know if you agree or disagree with any of my points. If you liked the video, please leave a like and subscribe. Let's get this channel to 500 subscribers. Also, let me know if there's other topics you'd like me to talk about, or check out some of my other videos. Thank you for watching the video and for your support of the channel.